Do you get inspired by reading quotes and proverbs and sayings, just like the ones I mention at the end of every podcast episode? Well, if you do, then this is going to be an inspirational and motivational episode for you, because we are looking at some common proverbs, quotes, and sayings that you might find quite profound or deep or meaningful or motivational, and hopefully you're going to end this episode feeling pumped up and ready to go. We will be looking at a few common proverbs and quotes in this episode and exploring their meanings, while also looking at some new English vocabulary related to each one. So I hope you're ready to be inspired, just like I am, and let's get right into it. This is the Level Up English podcast, the best place to come to level up and improve your English one day at a time. My name is Michael, your host and your teacher for the day. Let's get started. I think first of all, it could be good to go over some definitions, just so we are all clear. First of all, I want to talk about the difference between cryptic and literal. Let's start with literal, because you may know this one already. Literal, or literally, is something that means exactly what it says. So very often with an expression or a proverb, there might be a literal meaning. That may not be the part of the meaning that you are supposed to focus on, depending on the quote. For example, in the expression, "It's raining cats and dogs," literally, the literal meaning is cats and dogs are falling from the sky. But of course, that's not exactly what we mean. It's not the literal meaning that's important in that idiom. I'd say it's a bit more cryptic. Maybe not cryptic, but we can cover this word as well, because this will come up today. So if something is cryptic, there's some mystery about it. It's mysterious, it's difficult to understand, and maybe the meaning is hidden. And I think in many proverbs and stories, there's often a cryptic meaning, because I suppose when you figure out the meaning, it's more impactful, right? For some reason, it impacts you more when the meaning is cryptic. Right? If I just say, tidy your room, it's not very motivational, right? But if you give it a big story and the actual meaning in the story is very hidden and cryptic, then somehow the story becomes more meaningful. I wonder why that is, but there are many examples of this. A lot of Bible stories are kind of like this. They're very cryptic, where it's talking about the relationship between two people, and then hidden down below, there's a hidden meaning in the story. This is a very common thing in literature and TV shows, of course, as well. So in each of the proverbs today, we might be looking at some of the literal meanings and the more cryptic ones as well. And I think it's also useful to define the differences between many similar terms here, because there are so many different words for quotes and proverbs, and they have slight differences. So I think it's good to talk about them. Let's start with a proverb. A proverb is a traditional saying, right? Saying is another word, but really a saying is just something that people say many times. So it's a traditional saying that often gives advice or a commonly believed truth that is usually passed down through many generations. So often these are linked to cultures and countries. You might have, I know there are many Chinese proverbs and African proverbs that have become famous in English now. And usually these are quite short. They're often quite short, but the meaning can be quite deep and impactful again. So that's a proverb. A quote, there's some crossover between a proverb and a quote, but they are quite distinct things. A quote is more broad, it's more general, and this is just someone's exact words. So basically, a quote is something that someone said before or wrote before. So I always share a quote at the end of the episodes. Sometimes these quotes are more like proverbs, but generally it's something that a famous person has said before that I think is quite interesting. So you can take anything I say in this episode today, any sentence, and that will be a quote from Michael. Yeah, this is a really useful word if you don't know, because quote can also be a verb, like to quote someone. whereas proverb is only a noun, which, come to think of it, is a bit confusing because it literally has verb in the name, proverb, but for some reason it's not a verb. Confusing, right? And now we've got two more, which I may mention again today. I also may not. And honestly, if you asked me, I wouldn't know how to define these. It's not so clear. There's a lot of crossover. So I've got a definition written down here, but these are ones you might hear. One word is an aphorism, which is aphorism, aphorism. And this is a kind of simple, brief, and clever saying that has some kind of observation about life. To me, these kind of seem a little bit in between quotes and proverbs, right? A proverb is like a sentence that has gone down through generations of people and families. A quote is just something that someone said. An aphorism, I think, is often shorter, and it's a commonly said phrase, right? So a quote may not be commonly said, but an aphorism maybe is. One example could be knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. This is a phrase that people have said many times before. It's not exactly a proverb, I would say, because it's not something that you might, get a lot of motivation from, but it's something that we might use in a conversation to prove our point. So that's an aphorism. And then the final one is a maxim. Maxim. I always think of a Russian man when I hear this because it's a Russian name, isn't it? Something like that. But yeah, maxim, it's not a Russian man. This is similar to aphorism. It's a short statement that expresses a rule or a behavior or some moral principle, like what you should do. So it's kind of the same as an aphorism in many ways, but I think it's often used as a reminder to do something or to behave in a certain way. So one example is, honesty is the best policy. Honesty is the best policy, right? I wouldn't say this is a quote because I don't think we know who originally said this phrase, this sentence. Proverb, again, I think in order to be a proverb, it kind of has to be passed down through generations and maybe be connected to a culture. That doesn't really match with this one. Aphorism, I think the main reason why I would say this is a maxim is again because it's like a reminder of how you should behave, where aphorism maybe doesn't always talk about that. So yeah, basically it means always be honest. Honesty is the best policy. There's a half rhyme in that sentence, which is why it's easy to remember. So yeah, don't worry too much about them. There's a lot of crossover. So just again, maxim, aphorism, quote, and proverb. And we also had saying, which is more general. Saying really could be all of them. So quite a lot of words there that all really mean the same thing. And I'm sure there are even more as well, which I haven't thought of today, but that's enough for now, isn't it? So let's get into our first, what would this be? I think this might be, I would call it a maxim, maybe. I'm not sure if I'm going to match these words to everyone, but now that we've just spoken about it, I think this first one may be a maxim. And this is everything in moderation. Everything in moderation. So this is a really good maxim. You may have heard this before. You may have this in your own language as well. And yeah, moderation just means not doing things in extremes, not doing too much of something. And I think this is really the key to living a good, balanced, happy life. Not too much of the good stuff, of course, not too much of the bad stuff, and yeah, somewhere in the middle. I think that's the way life goes, isn't it? We always need the middle. Like if you're watering a plant, not too dry, not too wet, somewhere in the middle. I think most things in life are happiest when there is moderation. So this one I would say is not so cryptic. There's not really a hidden meaning. It's just literally saying what it means, right? Everything in moderation. I think what that is saying is even good things can be harmful. Even good things can cause your life to get worse, perhaps. And I think the area where I often struggle with this is in things that I really like to do. Of course, in like hobbies and stuff. And often these are hobbies that are not even like They're not even said to be bad for you. Of course, I could talk about video games, everything in moderation. We all know that too much screen time is not good for your eyes. I think you would all support me to reduce my screen time. But what if I said I really like sewing and I think I need to moderate my sewing? I need to focus on this maxim, everything in moderation, when I think about my sewing habit, making clothes and bags. And you might think, well, why is that moderated? I mean, you enjoy it, so what's the big deal? But what I find personally is if I do too much of something, I will burn out. I think you might relate to this, right? When we first begin a new hobby, it's very common, it's very easy to get super addicted, and it's the main obsession in your life. It's all you can think about. And what happens when you do that is you burn out, you get tired, you gave too much energy into something, and it was not sustainable. In other words, it couldn't last. So I've had this with many things. I see this pattern. When I first got into yoga in my early 20s, I was doing it every single day. I was addicted to doing yoga. I loved it so much. I felt like it was a big realization, like, how come no one told me about this before? I love it. It's amazing. And then, of course, I got burnt out and I stopped doing it because I set that expectation too high. So nowadays, when I begin a new hobby, I don't stop myself from doing it, but I do try to have this mindset that everything in moderation is good, right? If I want to do this hobby for a long time, I may need to limit how much time I spend doing it. And of course, another thing is the more distance you have between you and something you love, the more you love it. Whether it's a person or an item or a place, right? Distance will make you appreciate it even more. So sometimes not having this thing all the time can be good. But yeah, that's the thing that came to my mind. I will try to give an example for each one today. Let me know what that would be for you. Let me know what you need to moderate in your life. Everything in moderation. Okay, that's a fairly simple one to begin with, not cryptic. The next one is a bit more cryptic and a little bit more advanced in terms of vocabulary. So this is you reap what you sow. You reap what you sow. Reap, by the way, is not a very common word on its own. It is, however, very common in this proverb. Would I say proverb? I think I might say an aphorism for this one. This is a common aphorism. You reap what you sow. So yeah, reap is common only in this aphorism. Outside of this aphorism, it's less common perhaps. But yeah, this is a bit more cryptic now. So the literal meaning, you reap what you sow. Let me explain the vocab first, actually. So to sow, I mentioned sewing just now, but unfortunately, this is a different sow. The previous one, the hobby, is S-E-W, you're sewing. This one is S-O-W. Different spelling, same pronunciation. So to sow is to plant seeds in the ground. You could say plant seeds, but it's more common to say sow seeds, right? To sow seeds. So if you're planting some, I don't know, tomatoes maybe? If you're planting tomatoes, you need to sow the tomato seeds in the ground. To reap, maybe you can guess what this means based on the context. To reap is a slightly more old-fashioned sounding word for harvest, to harvest. In other words, to get the result of what you planted. So you reap the tomatoes, you harvest the tomatoes when they're ready many weeks later. So yeah, literally the meaning of you reap what you sow is, whatever you put in the ground is what you get out of the ground. If you put tomato seeds in the ground, you have no right to be sad if potatoes do not grow. Of course, they will not grow because you did not plant potatoes. But yeah, the more cryptic meaning here is not about farming or gardening, it's about your behavior. So this is basically you get what you give. Whatever you give out into the world is what you get back. It's often used in a kind of karmic sense, like karma, like what you do in terms of your evil actions will come back to you, or good actions as well. Basically, this just means your actions have consequences, right? What you do will have a consequence. So if I'm really evil and rude and horrible to everyone, then the stuff I will get back is going to be similar. I'm going to have horrible friends or no friends, and I'm going to have a hard time in life. But if I sow some happiness, right? That's a metaphorical sentence. If I'm giving some happiness, or I'm trying to help people learn English, right? Then maybe I can reap some happiness myself. And to be honest, I do. So maybe that could be my example for this one. I try my best to approach the world with a positive, optimistic, happy, friendly mindset. Partly because it makes me happy, but also I suppose because deep down I know that you reap what you sow. I do my best to help you. If any of you want to email me with some questions, I will be happy to help you for free. I'm not going to charge you for my email. And it's because I like doing it. I don't have to, but I enjoy it. And in return, I get so many lovely emails and comments from all of you in the group classes every week. I don't ask people for compliments, but all of the students, they do give lovely compliments about the lessons and the podcast, and it really makes me feel very warm and happy inside. So I think this is an example of reaping what I sow. I'm trying to help people, and people are being lovely and kind back to me, and it's a lovely way to live, isn't it? It's much nicer than the opposite. So perhaps you could use this, for example, if a friend was very horrible to someone, a friend was mean to someone, and then something bad happened to him later, you could say, I guess you reap what you sow. In other words, you kind of deserve this. You deserve what's happening to you right now. But yeah, this one is a little bit harder to think of a question, but I guess I could ask you to give a similar example to me. What is something that you try to sow in your life? And can you think of an example of something you reap? What is something that you get back from your deeds? Right, deed is another word for action. From your actions, do you get back some nice behavior or nice attitudes or even a physical present? Let me know what that would be for you. Yeah, you reap what you sow. This one is a very useful quote, we could say. Is it a quote? I suppose this might be a proverb of some kind. Again, hard to say, lots of crossover. But yeah, I'll tell you, this is a calm sea never made a skilled sailor. A calm sea never made a skilled sailor. So this is another cryptic one, which I love. I love that imagery of the literal meaning. So literally, if the ocean is always calm, there are no waves, no storms, the sailor, the person steering the boat, will not have the skill to be good at sailing. Did that make sense? I tried my best to think of how to explain it simply. Right, so yeah, you need to have the storms in order to become a good sailor, basically. And the same is true for life. I love this idea. I think about it quite a lot. If we think about a tree who has spent its whole life in the perfect conditions, maybe in a greenhouse, for example. This is a common problem that gardeners have with taking their plants out of the warm, sunny greenhouse into the cold, windy environment of the open garden. And this plant in the greenhouse has never experienced rain or wind. So it's very soft. It's a very soft plant. And when there is one storm outside of the greenhouse, it is very easy for this plant to snap and break and die because it hasn't got used to that difficulty of enduring the storm, right? Conversely, if there is a plant that has spent its whole life in stormy, horrible conditions, then there's nothing you can do to break it, right? It's so strong because it's used to those conditions. So that's another way I like to think about it. To me, that makes a lot of sense. And of course, the cryptic meaning here is the same applies to humans. In order to be a strong, mentally strong, physically strong, and wise person, we need to go through challenges and difficulties because they help us grow, they help us get stronger, and we become more capable, right? If you are I suppose this is the problem of parenting, right? If you're the kind of parent, your mum or dad, who is protecting your kid, in every moment, always making sure they're happy. Again, we can say everything in moderation, right? If you do that, they're not going to learn how to deal with hardships on their own. Because whenever they have a difficulty, they're expecting their parents will come and help them. And when they get into the real world, they're going to be very, let's just say they're going to have a difficult time, right? And I think that the power, the skill of parenting is finding that balance about taking care of your kids, but not giving them everything they need. They need to develop some independence on their own, don't they? I love this proverb because it does help me appreciate the hard times a lot more. No matter how many hard times you had, they help contribute to the person you are today. They make you stronger and wiser, and I love that idea. So when I think back to my most painful memories, physically and mentally, I can kind of see now, looking back, I can kind of see how they contributed to improving my character today. And I suppose if we're thinking about jobs, one possibility I can think of is, when I was a teenager and early 20s, I tried many, many jobs. I actually made a private podcast episode all about this, where I spoke about all the many jobs I had in my life and my experiences at each one. So that's a good one for the members to listen to. And honestly, some of them were really horrible. The worst one that comes to my mind, which I'll just tell you what it was an overnight shift in a factory. I was working just for one day. It was a trial job. It wasn't a real job. It was just to see if I was a good candidate, a good worker. 12 hours, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. in a factory with no windows, doing the same kind of job non-stop for 12 hours, basically, packing food. And it was so depressing. I couldn't even handle it for one night. I felt so horrible. And I mean, one aspect, it gave me a lot of empathy and compassion for the people who work there. I know many of them, they didn't want to be there, but they just had to support their families. So I did have understanding and empathy for those people. But I think for me, personally, I saw it as a really difficult experience. I found it was draining my energy, my happiness as well, my positivity. And that's just one example, but I had many job experiences that I didn't like over the years. And I think all of those difficult moments motivated me to want to do something on my own, which is what I'm doing right now with this podcast. So I think this is somewhat related, isn't it? If you never have that stormy sea, you never have those bad times, you will never be motivated to make improvements to your life, right? So sometimes that's the benefit of a storm. That's the metaphor, right? Or a bad time in your life. If you go through a bad time, like a bad breakup, you lose your job, or you're living in a place you really hate, maybe that can motivate you to make a positive change. If you never have a storm and your life is always just kind of, yeah, it's okay, it's not great, it's not bad, then you'll never have that motivation to make a change. So that could be one example of the storm making you stronger, maybe. I think you might see the connection I'm trying to make there. But yeah, let me know. So once again, a calm sea never made a skilled sailor. Maybe you can give me an example or think of an example of a time when you went through a storm in your life, a bad time, and what you learnt from it. So how the storm made you a more skilled sailor. Let me know what those two would be in your life. I think I'm enjoying this way too much. I am taking longer than I expected, and I'm not getting through my list very quickly. So I don't know, if you like this one, let me know and I'll do a part 2 because I have plenty more today. But let's see how many more we can do. This one is very common. In fact, you may have heard of it. This one, what would I say this is? Aphorism, maxim. Could be a maxim, maybe. I don't know, could be all of them. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Literally, it's just good advice, right? If you put all of your eggs in one basket, if you drop the basket, you will lose them all. How annoying. You've got no more eggs, right? The cryptic meaning, the slightly more hidden meaning, is the comment on life, I would say. So the eggs, let me try and think about this carefully. The eggs represent opportunities, plans, I suppose. And the basket is kind of like your action or what you're doing, I guess. So if you put all your eggs in one basket, that's you are totally relying on one way to get success, right? If you, let's use the egg example again. So you're going from the chicken farm back to your house. If you take 2 baskets, right, there's a possibility that you can drop one basket, but at least you will still have half of the eggs in the other basket. If you take each egg one by one, just one egg in your hands at a time, then you might drop a couple of them, but it's a very good chance that you will make it back to the house with some of the eggs. So really what this means is it's important to diversify. Diversify is do many things in a diverse way, a little bit here, a little bit there. I think of this in terms of income. You have to diversify your income to spread the risk. So again, this may not be relevant to you, but especially if you're working for yourself like me, I think it's important for self-employed people to diversify their income. And I may not be the best at doing this. It's always tricky to find that balance. Of course, if you want to make money by teaching English, that's one way of getting income. And maybe you could also get some adverts on your podcast, and that could be another way of getting income. So that is diversifying. So even if I have no more adverts on my podcast, or maybe no one likes my podcast anymore, I still have income with my English students, right? So that could be one example of diversifying. My eggs are not all in one basket. Another very common example with money is investing. That's where we often use this word diversify. You need to have a diverse investment portfolio in order to have a higher chance of making money over time. If you only invest in Apple, Apple stock, then it's a little bit risky, because if Apple stock goes down, or maybe for some reason the company stops existing, then you lose all your money. So it's not very safe. So I would say don't put all your eggs in one basket. You need to diversify. So invest in 100 companies, and then even if one company fails, you still have 99 left that are making you money. So it's a really good money analogy, a good money quote, I would say, or maxim. But yeah, I think it can be used in many ways. If you're job searching, for example, you don't just apply to one job and then stop for the day. You might apply to 10 jobs. So I would say don't put all your eggs in one basket. This job may not accept you as an employee. You need to apply for other jobs to make it more likely that you will be accepted. So yeah, let me know what that brings up for you. Is there any area in your life where you are diversifying to be safer? Or maybe there's some area where you already have all your eggs in one basket and you need to diversify a bit more. Is it money, friendship even? Maybe you only have one friend and that's a bit risky because they might leave one day. Maybe you need to diversify your friends. So yeah, many areas where this could be applicable, used. So let me know where that comes up for you. I think this could be a good one to end on now, because it's another egg-related aphorism, maxim. I'm going to call this a maxim as well. So it's another egg-related maxim. And this is, don't count your chickens before they hatch. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. Right, so imagine you are back on your chicken farm, you have lots of eggs, and you're saying, wow, I've got 10 eggs, so that means I'm going to have 10 chickens. And me behind you as a more experienced chicken farmer, I would say, ha ha ha, don't count your chickens before they hatch. How foolish of you to do that. And I think you know why, right? Because it's possible that some of the eggs will not turn into chickens. Some of them just don't work, I guess. They haven't been fertilized properly. They are just non-chicken eggs. I don't know much about eggs and chickens, but I guess that's how it works. Maybe only a couple of them will actually turn into chickens. So yeah, don't count your eggs before they have hatched. By the way, to hatch is just the word when an animal breaks out of its egg and it's born. Animals that lay eggs, we say they hatch, but we don't say it for humans or other animals, only animals that lay eggs. So yeah, that's a literal meaning. And of course, if you're a chicken farmer, that's good advice, right? But the cryptic meaning, the more hidden meaning, is don't celebrate success or don't make any plans before you are sure of the outcome, before you're sure of what will happen. So in the past month, like last month when I was working very hard on my website, I could have said, halfway through, oh yes, the website is going so well. I can't wait. I know I'm going to have 500 students joining all at the beginning. They're all going to love it and it's going to be amazing. And then someone could say, Michael, don't count your chickens before they hatch. You haven't even finished the plan yet. You don't know if it's going to work or be successful. Maybe it's all going to go wrong and that's not going to go as you expect. So yeah, don't count your chickens before they hatch. Or maybe we can think literally, kind of literally hatching, but from a human point of view, so being born, you may be expecting a baby and you might be thinking, oh, I can't wait to have a little boy. We're going to go play football. I'm going to, do all these boy things with him. I'm going to teach him how to play with his toy bow and arrow in the garden. All these boy things like boys love to do. I can't wait for that. And then your wife says, hold on a second. Don't count your eggs before they hatch. How do you know we're having a boy? What if we have a little girl and she's not interested in these things? So there's another example for you. So yeah, let me know what that would be for you. Can you think of a situation where you were a bit early? Maybe you started celebrating too early, or you were making plans based on information that was not final yet. And maybe you counted your chickens before they hatched and you shouldn't have. Okay, so there we had a few today. Let's see if I can go back and do a review very quickly. Everything in moderation. You reap what you sow. A calm sea never made a skilled sailor. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. And don't count your chickens before they hatch. There we go. So there's a few there. Hopefully some of them were new for you and you learnt some new words along the way as well. Again, I love this topic. You can tell because I won't shut up about it. So if you want to see a part 2, let me know. If no one lets me know, I probably won't do it. So your comment will be quite powerful in shaping the future episodes that I make. So if you want part 2 or any other episode idea that you want to suggest, let me know and I will add it to my list of episode ideas in the future. I think now we can do something that we haven't done in quite a long time. And this is have a look at some audio messages from the listeners. So maybe you might not know this actually, but if you go to the website levelupenglish.school and you click on the podcast button at the top of the page, there is a space on that page to leave an audio message. And if you do that, you can have your voice played on the podcast in the future. Usually this is where I ask for questions. So you can ask a question and I will answer your question on a future episode. But for some reason today, we have a couple audio messages that are just comments, like very short comments from different people. So maybe we can play all of them today and just say hello to a few of you. So this first one is from Mohammed.
How can I improve my English language and pass IELTS text in a complete score?
So thank you very much, Mohammed. If you didn't hear, Mohammed was basically asking how to improve his English and also pass the IELTS exam. That's obviously two huge questions, which maybe don't quite have time for today. To improve your English, I think it's a personal question. It's different for everyone. It depends on your level and your way of learning, I would say. I do think it's good to get the foundations right, so that's starting a good routine. Way back in episode 86 of the podcast, I did talk about this a little bit. It was called How to Start Learning English, and I spoke about making a routine, finding out your learning style, focusing on the key skills. So to get started learning English, I think episode 86 could be a good place to go. And yeah, for the IELTS exam, I think generally the advice is just make sure you're doing a lot of practice beforehand, covering each area of the exam. I do have an IELTS course on Level Up English that you could have a look at if that's interesting. But yeah, see if you can just get lots of exam practice before the exam and make sure you are focusing mostly on the hardest areas for you. And if you can afford it, getting a teacher to coach you along the way would be very useful as well. But yeah, thank you, Mohammed, for your message, though. I do appreciate it. And next, we had a really sweet message from Yumna. Yumna left a nice short message here. No question. I think she just wanted to practice her English and say hello. So I thought I'd play this one because it was very sweet. I liked it. So here we go.
How are you? My name is Imna. My old is 15. I love English.
So there it was. Yumna said that she is 15, I think, and she loves English. So that's cool. I'm super happy to hear that younger people, teenagers, are also listening to the podcast. I know it might sound weird if you're 15, but to me, being 15, it feels like 2 years ago. And I know people older than me probably feeling that even more, but it's great. I'm sure if you're 15 and you look at me, you think I'm so much older than you, but it feels like yesterday. It's really insane how time flies. But anyway, I am getting lost on a tangent. Thank you very much, Yumna. Best of luck with your English, and I hope you stick with the podcast so I can support you as well. And we have one final pretty short audio message from Malik as well. So let's listen to this one.
My name is Malik, and I'm an international student at University of Manchester. I'm studying medicine. I want to be a neurosurgeon, and I want to achieve an internship in Neuralink companies.
This is just an editing note as well. I noticed the quality of the audio wasn't perfect, so I tried to clean it up a bit with AI, but it didn't fix it completely, so that's why it sounded a little bit strange. Another great message. Again, no question here, just a little introduction, but maybe Malik was looking to have their voice put on the podcast, so thank you very much for that. Great to hear what you're doing. So studying in Manchester, looking to become a surgeon as well. That sounds incredibly hard, but really important work, of course. So I hope you're having a good time in Manchester. I know it's quite a nice city to be in, and maybe you can explore the area a bit as well outside of Manchester if you have the time. But yeah, best of luck with your studies, and thank you for listening to my podcast. So yeah, lovely people there. If you want to leave a comment, or even better, a question, maybe I can dedicate a full episode to it. Again, go to my website, click on podcast, and you can record a 1-minute audio message there. And if you are nervous about your English being played, maybe you feel like it's not good enough, I do clean them up a little bit. If you have a few seconds of silence, I might shorten it for the podcast. So I will do my best to make you sound as good as I can on the episode. So don't worry too much. Okay, I want to end on a quote now. This actually is a quote. It's not a proverb. It's not an aphorism. This is just a quote that I heard somewhere before. I can't even remember. And I wrote it down because it means quite a lot to me. So this is, would I fast forward through this moment? If so, I need to make a mindset shift. So let's say you had the magic ability to skip this moment now. Maybe what you're doing right now is very boring and you'd like to skip it. I think for a lot of us, a huge amount of life is like this. We want to skip and fast forward through moments in our lives. But then the risk of that is so much of your life is boring and skippable. Imagine getting to the end of your life and you look back and there's only a few moments that you actually really enjoyed. And I think this doesn't necessarily mean you have to change your life. It just means change your mindset, change the way that you think about things. If something is really boring, maybe there's a way that you can be more present, more mindful, focus on the moment, focus on how happy you are to be alive, and it might make the moment, the experience more enjoyable. Right? So I don't know if that lands with you, that means the same thing to you as it does to me, but to me that's very impactful, it's very meaningful. So if I would fast forward through this moment, like watching a TV show, I might need to change my mindset to, take a deep breath and enjoy what I'm doing more. So there we go. Let's not always think about the next thing. Let's enjoy the moment and enjoy our studies as well. Trying to think about how I can relate it back to English, but it's not so easy. So I will leave it there though. Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode. I do hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one next week. Goodbye. You have been listening to the Level Up English podcast. If you would like to leave a question to be answered on a future episode, then please go to levelupenglish.school/podcast. That's levelupenglish.school/podcast. And I'll answer your question on a future episode. Thanks for listening.